Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. The case that I'm going to be looking into today is a missing persons case from many years ago now. In fact, this little girl has actually been missing for 70 years and we still have no idea what happened to her. And it is very frustrating, as you can imagine. It is the case of Beverley Potts. Beverley Potts was born on the 15th of April in 1941 to parents Robert and Elizabeth Potts in Cleveland, Ohio. She was known for being like a sweet little girl, but she was also very shy, and at the time of her going missing she was only 10 years old. Despite being very shy and, you know, introverted, especially with men, it was said she was a lot shyer of men and didn't really trust them for some reason. But despite all that, she was very responsible and just generally a really good little girl. At the time of her going missing, she did have an older sister who was 22 years old, and she was called Anita, and she lived with her parents and her sister on Lynette Avenue. Now, Beverley, growing up, she was obsessed with like performing arts, dancing and music, and there was one annual thing that happened not far from where she lived, and it was something she absolutely loved to go to. There was a summer festival kind of thing, and it was called Showwagon, and it would come around every year in the summer, and it's just a festival that kids just love to do, and Beverley was one of them. She really looked forward to it coming around every year. There was a lot of performers that did things for free there. There was a massive variety of, you know, acts and things like that they did in it, and it was just an event that a lot of families and children would attend. It was actually going to be held at Hollerin Park, which is where it was held every year. And that park was quite popular with the children anyway. But let me just say that their parents didn't really want them going there after dark. So it was a place, you know, rife with children. During the day, they would go, they would have fun, you know, and mainly be unsupervised. But their parents wanted them home before nighttime because it was said to be, you know, a bit of a dodgy place at night time. I don't know the ins and outs of that, whether there was just like, I don't know, dodgy people hanging around, teenagers or something like that, and they just didn't want their children there at night. I believe Beverley was in some sort of trouble with coming home late one day, and I don't know if she was grounded or something along those lines, but her mother didn't really want to let her go, but she knew that she absolutely adored going to this festival, and it was like the highlight of the year. So she decided that she would actually let her go. And this was on the 24th of August in 1951. It was 7 p.m. and Beverley left with one of her friends. Her friend was called Patricia, and I believe she lived next door or something like that. So they get on the bikes and off they go. They get to the festival and they quickly realise that it's actually pretty hard to get around a festival filled with people and acts and things like that on their bikes. So what they decided to do is they decided to go back home, which again, this festival was a very short distance to their home. So, you know, it's not like they were going to be travelling miles and miles to get home. They decided that they were going to drop their bikes off and return back to the festival, and that is exactly what they did. And this is the point where Patricia basically told Beverley that she'd promised her parents to be home before dark, and because it was going to be getting dark after 7:30, she wouldn't have that long before she would have to go home. Now, when she was going home, she really wanted Beverley to come with her, but the thing is that Beverley's parents had actually said that she could see the entire show. Now, if she probably would have known that Patricia had like a curfew that she had to be back before nighttime, she probably would have told Beverley the same, but she didn't know that, and so she just let her go and see the entire show. Despite a friend really wanting her to come, they split ways because Beverley wanted to stay and see the rest of the show like she was allowed to do, and Patricia was going to go home like her parents wanted her to do. So that was that. They ended up going their separate ways. Not only that, there was going to be like 15,000 people there, and so they figured that there was enough people there for nothing bad to happen, pretty much. So Patricia was on her way home. She steals one last glance over in Beverley's direction, and she sees her in this crowd of people with what she says there was like a woman behind her with her hand on her shoulder, and she also had a hand holding another child's hand, which is a pretty strange sort of thing in this case. Patricia didn't recognise this woman. She didn't know who she was. Beverley, again, kept herself to herself and was quite shy. They both had at that festival. They'd not spoken to this woman at the festival at all. And so she thought it was quite odd. Now, a lot of people have speculated as to whether this is correct, you know, whether she was mistaken, saw that her hand was on her shoulder when it wasn't, or something like that. But, you know, Patricia is adamant that she definitely saw it. So Patricia makes it home at about 9 p.m. And Beverley's family were at home watching this ball game on the TV. Gets to 10 p.m. and they're expecting Beverley to be home by now. And so they do get a little bit worried. So what they do is they decide to phone Patricia. You know, she was the one that was supposed to be with Beverley to see whether she was home yet, and she had told her that Patricia got home at 9. She'd been home for like almost an hour at this point, and that she left Beverley there because Beverley said that she was allowed to see the entire show, whereas Patricia was not. This is when Robert decides to gather up a few people and go to the park themselves. You know, the family are absolutely panicking, just at the wit's end at this point. Where is their little girl? She's 10. She should have been home by now, and she is not. And she was a pretty responsible girl, like I've already said. So they expected her to be home, and she wasn't. So they were so worried. We go to this park, and it's a massive area. I believe it was like 13 acres. It had tons of trees everywhere. You know, it's quite dense in areas. And it was dark at the time. So it would have been really difficult to look around. Maybe they thought that she had wandered off in an area that she didn't know and gotten lost or something like that. But, you know, the visuality of it and the visibility of it, as long with how dense and things it was, and it would have just made it really difficult to look for her. Despite that, they searched and searched and they could not find her. I believe they did it for about an hour before they finally decided that they were going to call the police. It was stated at the time of her disappearance she had dark blonde hair, blue eyes, was 4'11" and 90 pounds. She had a gap in her teeth and a scar above her left eyebrow. She was wearing a white undershirt, like a red-pink turtleneck jersey. She had blue denim jeans on, or pants, and a navy blue jacket. She also had green socks, 2 hair clips, and a gold ring that was missing all the stones. If any of that rings any bells to anyone all them years ago, or maybe, like, again, this is like a 70-year-old case at this point, so maybe somebody has told you some information that they saw all those years ago, you know, just to give you that description, just in case it sparks any memory of anything. But her mother was able to give such a detailed description of her clothing because she meticulously picked out her clothes, like, every day. And so she knew exactly what she'd picked her daughter out for that day, because she'd picked it and she knew what she was wearing down to a T. To this day, it's actually one of the biggest missing persons cases in Cleveland, with it now being a 70-year-old mystery and still no clues as to what happened to Beverley. So they started their investigation pretty much the day after, because again, it was really dark at that point. They began looking for her. They posted missing persons posters everywhere. They put a photo out. They had police. They had volunteers. Everyone was looking for Beverley. But nobody found her. Nobody found any clues. Nobody found anything. Then school started again, and the police decided that they were going to interview the children, because a lot of children were at that festival that night. Maybe they saw something that they, you know, hadn't told anyone, or that they didn't realise was important, and so that is why they spoke to lots of different children. Don't forget though, they are interviewing children at this point. They're like between the ages of 9 and 11, I believe. So they just had to be really careful as to what they took as what they believed to be fact and what they believed to be fiction, because sometimes kids just want to get involved in things, or sometimes they are just plain mistaken or literally just made something up because they're children and they do things like that. So they just had to be really careful on what they took as sort of fact or not. And there was a lot of kids that came forward to say their part. There was one child, a boy at the age of 13, I believe, who came forward, and the police actually believed that what he was saying was true. Now, he said that he saw Beverley leaving the show wagon. After it had all finished, after everything was over and done with, she started heading home. Well, at least in the direction of where her home would be, so you assume that she's heading home. They asked how he could have possibly known that it was Beverley. You know, it was very dark. Maybe he had mistaken it for a different little girl. He said that he knew it was Beverley because she was walking funny. Now, everyone that knew Beverley knew that she kind of walked, I guess you could say, if you imagine like a duck's feet that poke outwards, that's how it could be described as. And so he saw her walking with her feet pointed outwards and knew it was Beverley. The police really do believe this, and that made it so that she had probably been taken on her way home from the show wagon, and, you know, again, she didn't live that far away at all. I believe it was only a few minutes to her house, really. So she was abducted within a few minutes of walking home, kind of thing. Police did receive many calls from all these different people. They had tips. They had this strange aspect of the case. I found it was a man who rang up and said that he had Beverley. He wanted this $25,000 like ransom, I guess, and that he would release her if he got it. So they set this up. Basically, a detective actually dressed up like her mother and put on this wig and whatnot, and then filled this bag with shredded paper and one $5 bill, I believe, and then off they set to the location that they was asked to go. This person started approaching, realised that the person in front of them was a lot taller and sort of more stockier than the woman that he had expected, and he started legging it, thinking that it was a setup, which it was. The detective legged it after him, and he actually does manage to catch him. They arrest him, but it basically turns out that he was just in it for the money. He didn't have Beverley, he didn't know anything, and he just saw it as an opportunity, which is so devastating to, you know, the family. Like, they would have thought that they had hope to get her back and just pay this ransom, and it was all just a lie, and it's just really sad. But yeah, he was just in it for the money. So her case just runs cold again, and it did so for many years. There's been no substantial leads or suspects in the case after that, and we just don't know anything. Obviously, there's a lot of theories in the case, which we can look into now. There's a massive theory as to that she was abducted by someone she knew. Now, Beverley used to babysit a lot around the neighborhood and things, so there's speculation as to whether possibly one of the people that she babysat for had taken her or something like that. She was untrustworthy of men, but she was more trusting of women, so maybe the person that took her was a woman, who knows? Or maybe if it was a man that she, you know, if she babysat for somebody's child and knew the father, then maybe she would be more trusting of him because she knew him and had come into his house a lot. You know, you're more trusting of the people that you've been around a lot rather than a complete stranger. It was said that she was definitely taken over because she wouldn't have gone voluntarily with anyone, like, at all. There was a theory that maybe she got into somebody's car with the promise that they would take her home, and obviously they did not. But again, she was very untrusting of people. But if this person was a woman, or maybe she knew her again, then she would have more likely gotten in. Obviously, there is a theory that the woman behind Beverley, that Patricia says she saw with her hand on her shoulder, was the one that abducted her. But this woman has never been found. She was not recognised by anyone. Nobody knew who she is, and still do not know who she is to this day. You know, there's just nothing on that. There was another man named Henry Lee Rush. He came forward in 1955 to say that he killed Beverley after luring her to a bridge with some sweets. He said he killed her in 1952, which wasn't even the year that she went missing. He basically later on did recant that and said that he lied. The reasoning behind it was that he had been extradited from Cleveland and used that just as a way back in to get extradited back. In 1974, two detectives received a tip from a local attorney that said one of his clients may have kidnapped Beverley. They spoke to him. He would admit to various things, and he basically said that he didn't really remember a Beverley, but then said he would have flashbacks and remembered a Beverley. So again, not really reliable. It was basically said that they didn't have enough evidence to tie him into it, and so that was dropped. There was also something else. In the beginning of 2000, a reporter came forward to police, Berent Larkin, and he said that he had been receiving these letters from an elderly gentleman who had basically said that he would confess his sins to Beverley's murder and things like that, and that he would do it before his death on the 24th of August in 2001, which just so happens to be the 50th anniversary of her going missing. That never happened though, because he then wrote another letter saying that he was going into a nursing home and that he was unable to keep his promise. Police did look into it, of course they did, but it is believed that it was just a hoax, unfortunately. The last tip to come in was in 2015 when police received this anonymous tip saying that they gave details of this possible suspect. Now, these details haven't been released to the public, but police took to news, social media, things like that to ask this anonymous person to call back, and they never did. This was looked into as much as it could be, but it was pretty much thought again that it was just another false alarm, another hoax, or just somebody trying to ring in and, I don't know, just give false hope, in a sense. The real sad thing about this case is that Beverley went missing at the age of 10, 70 years ago, which would make her 80 years old now. And her being 80 years old means that her family is no longer here. Her mother, her father have long since passed away, even her sister, who, again, her sister was older than her, so, you know, she was 22 and she was 10, so they've all passed away now, and it's just really sad that they will never get the answers that they had hoped to get. You know, over the years, they've been an advocate for trying to find Beverley and put her name out there and keep her case in people's minds, and I do hope that it is solved one day. Obviously, like, her relatives in the generations down are hoping that one day, you know, like, her sister's children are hoping that one day their aunt's disappearance will be solved, which obviously we do all hope for. So yeah, we just don't want Beverley's case to be forgotten. Again, it's been such a long time at this point that you're probably thinking that it may never be solved, but it could be. If you are sharing these videos and sharing this information around the world, maybe somebody will remember something that somebody told them all them years ago, and it could lead to this case being solved, which I truly, truly hope that it does. So if you know anything whatsoever, please come forward and let the police know. But yeah, that is the end of the case. If you guys have enjoyed this video, give me a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for similar content. Anyway, that's all I have today on the case of Beverley Potts. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.